Okay. All right, we should be back. Gosh darn it. I'm going to play a little more Jane here while we're doing that. I'm going to keep my eye on the stream numbers. I'm going to mute the mic. All right, we are back. Thank you. Sorry about that. Facebook, for whatever reason, took a dump. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Let me just jump right into it. For those of you who don't know, Facebook just kind of dropped out in midstream and everybody was kind enough to jump back in, so welcome. So here's the deal. That is the track Jane by the amazing Dino Jalusic, who is one of the most sick singers. Obviously, it's a Jefferson Starship track, but the thing about that is I've been having a killer time jamming along with it. The rate, the key, all of those things. So what we're going to be focusing on are a combination of the notes of the E Dorian mode and how they intersect the E minor pentatonic scale. And last week what we were talking about was the concept of, I'm going to jump back in on the chat in just a minute, but let me, first of all, hi everybody. If we haven't met, I'm Doug. Welcome aboard. Nice to meet you. This is a very brief recap. Last week what we talked about is the idea of so many of us, as I started to talk about a little bit a minute ago, start off looking at scales as box patterns. And so guess what? When we run them, they have a tendency to sound like boxy patterns. We kind of go up and down and up and down. And we don't necessarily have an idea of how each of the notes in that particular scale are functioning and what their value is as it relates to the root, which is the most important thing. So as we look at this E Dorian mode and the E minor pentatonic, the most important notes, and my chalk escaped down here, so let me grab the chalk. And I stepped on it, so now how do you make two pieces of chalk out of one? You step on it. All right, so what we end up with is these notes right here are the 1, the flat 3, and the 5. And those are the money notes. And you want to learn to think of those in a couple of different ways. First of all, as we're working in E, those notes are going to be E, G, and B. And so as we're kind of cruising along, we resolve on the E, on the G, or on the B. And as we look at them kind of systematically, kind of on the high E string, we've got this E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, E, of which that E, G, and B are right there. So one of the things you can begin to do is just kind of get really comfortable with finding all your E's, G's, and B's, because if that's where we end our phrases for the most part, gosh darn it, we want to be able to find out where they are. So my suggestion would be to start off staying in the order of E, G, and B and going, okay, let me find an E, G, and a B on the low E string. And let me find an E, G, and a B on a D string. And let me find an E, G, and a B on the D string. And let me find an E, G, and a B on the G string. And let me find an E, G, and a B on the B string. And back to E, G, and B on the high E string. Because that tells you where you want to be looking to resolve that. Now, why that is so helpful is because it allows you to see where those notes exist in a linear sense everywhere on the neck, completely free of any of the patterns that we would traditionally drop them in. So that is to say, if I'm playing, for example, Jimmy Page loved to spend a lot of time in what we're going to call pattern number 3. That is not to be confused with position number 3, because this right here is the third position. This is pattern number 3, because there's generally 5 patterns thought of the minor pentatonic, and this would be pattern number 3. Wait for it. Starting off the third note sequentially of the minor pentatonic, which I guess would be a 1, flat 3. I guess that's the 4. 1, flat 3, 4. In any case, that little riff there, or it's classic Jimmy Page hanging out at that spot. It's a great place to play the minor pentatonic. And guess what? I guess we probably know that that's probably going to be the octave there, right? That's actually one of the first places that we kind of learn to find, oh, I guess that's where that E is on that A string. So the deal is that then we begin to go, okay, well, if that's my E, there's my G, and there's my B. So we have that. And if we begin to look outside of those boxes and begin to look linearly, there's my G, there's my E. All right. There's E, G, A. I guess that's going to be my B right there. Now, one of the other things to kind of keep in mind in the sequentiology of the E, G, A, B, D, E business of this, there's a spot between the G, A, and B, the flat 3, 4, and 5, where you kind of have these 2 consecutive whole steps, and I call those a double because it's 2 whole steps. So the deal is everywhere else, it's either a single whole step with a step and a half on either side, or it's this kind of double dealio. That is a... So being able to see that sequence is not only just kind of like, hey, I've got this double in the middle of that, which is a great thing to be able to recognize, but also go, hey, I guess that's E, G, A, G, A, B, A, B, D, B, D, E, D, E, B, D, E, G, and E, G, B, the octave there. And in turn, being able to identify where those E's, G's, and B's are on each of these strings allows us to break out of the pentatonic box. All right, now the next part of this picks up a little bit where we left off, but let me go back to what we did last week. The concept was we started off in B Phrygian. E Phrygian. Brain on. Because it has all the natural notes, and wait for it, it is the relative Phrygian mode of C major, right? No sharps or flats. But the deal is we go to practices. What I'm trying to do for people is make understanding theory and applying theory fun and musical. Because for a lot of folks, it's kind of like how I feel about peas. I hate peas. I don't want them in anything. I don't want to eat them. I don't really even like to look at them because of the way they make me feel. So a lot of people have kind of an adverse reaction to theory, largely because I think a lot of people go, well, how do I make this work? And we're usually not, especially as guitar players, showing the bridge of how to apply it on the fingerboard. I don't know about you. I can go all day long and kind of go, this is great. But the idea is we're taking the natural notes as an E, have to F, hold a G, hold a A, hold a B, have to C, hold a D, hold a E, E, hold a D, hold a C, have to B, hold a A, hold a G, hold a F, have to E. And the idea is if you can identify those notes, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, G, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E. So basically I went up the 6th, down the 5th, up the 4th, down the 3rd, up the 2nd, down the 1st, and then I would just flip it around and go up the 1st, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, B. That was up the 1st, down the 2nd, up the 3rd, down the 4th, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, D, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, and then we're going to go up the 5th and down the 6th, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E. And once you get comfortable, and one of the ways you can do each of those strings is doing the same thing I did on the high string. And I'm going to go up to the octave of whatever note I hammer on there. That's going to be that F natural. at the 1st and 13th frets. And then I kind of did the B there and walked down. Then I start off that E on the D string. Almost played a B flat. Now this is the great thing about knowing what the note names are, is when you make a mistake, it's actually good because you go, oh, I almost played a B flat instead of a B. Then we're going to go down. I played an F sharp. Now that's force of habit. So the idea is you just get comfortable with seeing those natural notes. And as soon as you get comfortable with seeing those, you just recognize them, and it's kind of like you stencil those notes on the neck. Now, I think I would have referred to this last week. There's a great video that Rick Beato, and again, I'd like to introduce you to my version of the Doppler dump site, also known as what I affectionately have called the Beato board. And I'll tell the story about that a little bit later. But the idea is that Steve Vai is telling the story about Joe Satriani to Rick Beato about being in a guitar lesson, Joe saying, hey, play F sharp on the second string, which is here, by the way. And Steve being, and Joe was like, out you go. Now, when I studied for 3.5 years with Joe, he never actually threw me out. It was actually way worse. I took hour lessons with Joe every Saturday morning for 3.5 years. And when it got bad, the hot seat was where I would sit. And let me tell you, there were many Saturdays where I took the heat. And you're about this far away from Joe, and he's a lovely guy, but as a teacher, he's going to let you know when you've done well, and he lets you know when you did not do well. And he let me know both of those things very well. So the point being is that I got to thinking about it, and I haven't had a chance to reach out to Joe and ask him why F sharp, but I'm pretty sure I know why. So if we think about sharps and flats, the key of G major and its relative modes, it's the first key that you get the addition of a sharp. And most of us on guitar, as we think about the key of E minor, we're getting rid of that C sharp and just having a C. And so we've just added one sharp. So as we think about E minor, that instead of thinking about E Phrygian, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E, we've got E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E, which really means that if you can identify where all the natural notes are on the neck, and then go, well, let me find the F sharps. Okay. You're well on your way to being able to play independently on any string without being stuck in the patterns. It also means that if you know where your F sharp is and we're looking for an E, G, and a B, I guess if that's F sharp, there's my E, and there's my G. So again, when on either side of that F sharp, so a minute ago I said the three most important notes in the key of E Dorian / E minor pentatonic, which is technically not a key, are the E, G, and a B. However, those other notes really matter because that's where we add the tension, of which the sweet notes, if you think about the tension notes as salt and the sweet notes as sugar, the balance of the salt and the sugar kind of allow us to create a palette where things just aren't completely vanilla. All right, let me take a quick moment and let me see if there are any questions specific to this. I want to, first of all, again, everybody that said hello, 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 hello. And I also needed to take a quick thing. So do me a favor, everybody. This is my kryptonite. So I'm going to need to make a note here. And if anybody has any pressing questions, repeat them as I kind of get back into the Q&A part of this, because that's a really important part. Favorite load box and why? Because I have lots of talks about that. But I want to make sure I stay on track such that anybody that's either watching this now or on the rerun gets that. Okay. First of all, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. All right. So here's the deal. It doesn't seem like anybody's asking. Again, hello all. All right. And I am playing through a stadium. Stadium. Only in Texas, my friend. Okay, so the deal is the ability to not get stuck in these patterns that we play over and over is a fundamental part of unlocking the neck. And if you're playing over a track, like Jane or whatever it is that you kind of go, oh, this moves me, being able to find the notes and knowing why the E, G, and B matter, it's because, again, the chord that's at the overarching root of the chord progression is an E minor chord. And the notes of that E minor chord come out of, in this particular case, the E Dorian mode, which are E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, E, and that E, G, and B are the 1, flat 3, and 5 compared to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. That's a 1, flat 3, 5 compared to, again, 1, 3, 5 would be a major triad. 1, flat 3, 5 is a minor triad, that E minor chord. And those notes are E, G, and B, 1, flat 3, 5. This chord is E, B, E, G, B, which means the voicing is 1, 5, 1, flat 3, 5. So what's neat about that, you can see where that flat 3 is in that chord. I guess that's my 2 and my 4. There's my 1, flat 7, 1, 2. Or if I'm playing minor pentatonic. So there, actually, I got to give a little bit of credit. There's a guy named Daniel somebody or other. The other day after working one of my crazy all-nighters shooting video, like a lunatic, I watched a video by a guy that does a thing called the 3 and 2 method in the minor pentatonic. And I'll take a quick moment and talk about what he's talking about. If I take these 3 notes, I can play 3 on this string. It's not how I personally choose to see the minor pentatonic. However, his concept works pretty well, except for the fact that for me, he wasn't, which he does really well in some of his other notes. He didn't say, by the way, if you're playing E minor pentatonic, that's flat 3, 4, and 5, flat 7, 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, 1, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, 1, which means that we want to be aiming for that flat 3, 5, and the 1. Those are the notes that we want to. We want to be aiming for. But he did this other thing with triads, where he started talking about neighbor notes of the triads. Well, I was like, oh, that's really cool. What I did was I just basically riffed on his idea, and this is why it's so important to always be learning and practicing, because you get exposed to new ideas. Those ideas become part of your DNA that somebody else became part of their DNA from somebody else that became part of their DNA, and so on. That's the great thing about how all this stuff works. So there I was kind of going, hey, well, if this is a 1, 5, 1, flat 3, 5, 1, sorry, 1, 5, 1, flat 3, 5, so that's going to be my 5 and my flat 7. And this is my flat 3 and my 4. That's my 1 and my flat 3. There's my 5 and my flat 7. And there's my 1 and my flat 3. So I can see where those neighbor notes are if I understand how those notes in that minor pentatonic are functioning. That is a huge deal. So I'm just going to run through that just one more time really quickly. When we're playing the root of our chord progression, if we know how the notes in that chord are functioning, and the stupid way of doing this would be, okay, I got an E, B, E, G, and a B. That is to say I've got an E, G, and a B. All of the E's are functioning as the 1, the G's are functioning as flat 3, and the B's are functioning as a 5. Got it. So if the chord was E, B, E, G, B, that's 1, 5, 1, flat 3, 5. As long as I don't try and call the 5 the 1 like moron. So here's the deal. First of all, good morning, the new folks. C sharp is the move. There we go. Come on. Awesome. So now, this is where it gets really fun, because the underlying thing that happened, and I think I mentioned this last week, I was playing something up and down the neck, and I've been really big, especially with my students, talking about learning to play the notes of whatever it is that you're trying to play without looking at them on the neck, and really developing that tactile sense. But I started kind of riffing on something, and my eyes were glued to the neck. I'm like, this is exactly the opposite of what I've been trying to show people. What am I thinking exactly? And literally what am I thinking? As I realized as I was looking at the notes that I was playing, I knew exactly which notes they were, because I was aiming for whatever notes I was trying to play out of the scale. And I was like, oh, my knowledge has gotten to my practice of that has meant that my knowledge has gotten deep enough that I can actually look at the neck and I have a pretty good idea of what I'm aiming for, even if I'm just kind of passing through town looking for that. And that means that as you begin to play in keys that are not as comfortable to you, you can apply it if you know what the natural notes are and start adding the sharps and flats, you get there. So the deal is those E's, G's, and B's that make up your tonic chord are synonymous to whatever your tonic chord was. Let's just say we're going to play in, B flat. So that's B flat, D flat, and F. So if I played that chord here, that's going to be a B flat, F, B flat, D flat, F, and a B flat. So, sorry. That's my 5 and my flat 7. I just overshot a little bit. So now we can take that. And that, I don't know, I actually, thanks to you, if I hadn't been here, I wouldn't have kind of done that on that other chord. But just like, my mind just went, whoa. Because what this means, building on what Daniel, whatever his name is, and if you search 3 + 2 or 3 and 2 method, you'll find him. Hats off. But if you take the concept of, and Chris Alexander asked about a sweeping thing, Chris's questions, love you, bro. I'm not going to get to that this week, but one of the things that's going to be a fundamental part of that is understanding how triads work. In this case, we're again looking at that E, G, and a B, a 1 flat 3 and a 5. Well, there's my flat 3, 5, 1. There's my 5, 1 flat 3. There's my 1 flat 3, 5, and my flat 3, 5, 1, and 5, 5, 1 flat 3 if I don't play a flat 7 instead of a 1. And the great thing is once you begin to think about things like this, we get there. Now, there's a group of people, I'm going to gently divide the room in half. There are people that are like, what in the flippin' world is this guy talking about? And there are other people that have studied all this stuff that have a frame of reference. I'm going to put that group of people together. Most of us did not have a Joe Satriani to kind of go, hey, here is kind of the foundational walk-up to understanding how all these things work. So if you're new to this, it's literally just as simple as going, I'm starting at the root, I'm playing a scale. There are certain notes in that scale that are going to be the chords that I use, the notes that I build the chord that's at the root of the chord progression of that key. The other notes in that key are going to be used as the bass notes of the chords that surround that quote-unquote tonic chord. But ultimately the thing goes roundy, 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 round, and resolves back at the tonic chord as if that. Right, and that last chord you can hear. Right, so. Of which the notes in that chord are the ones that we're aiming for, the E, G's, and B. But if nobody ever told you, hey, by the way, if you look inside that chord, you just nuke that chord, and instead of seeing it as this shape, you kind of go, that's an E, B, E, G, and a B. And you just break it into a part, and you write that from left to right on a piece of paper. Like, yeah, we can see that. E, B, E, G, and B. We end up with an E, G, and a B. And that's a 1 flat 3. Sorry, I've lost the ability to write. And a 5. I'm a little new to this. All right, so the point being, that is the worst drawing ever. Hang on a second. Thank you, Melissa Doppler, by the way. So the funny thing is the story about this little chalkboard. I did the stupidest thing this week, which was the stupidest thing that I did the week before, which was I went out, I got rear-ended on the freeway. Fortunately, I was fine. Amazingly enough, I was picking up a Mesa Boogie cabinet, imagine that. But I had to bring my car back, my minivan back to this place and have it repaired a second time. And the first time I went out to drop the van off, I flippin' forgot my wallet because when I'm in exercise mode, I've got my exercise pants on, and I don't have my wallet with me most of the time because I probably should, but I don't. And I went to grab my wallet the other morning, and it was down here because when I'm sitting here, I take it out and put it, next to my desk here. So I get out there, I'm like, oh, flippin' it, I can't believe I've done this again. So I'm driving back, and I love the way things work sometimes, and I take a slightly different route back to the house because there's a little bit of morning traffic in my hometown here. And this is sitting by the side of the road, and I'm like, because for me, what it means is that I can instantly kind of walk through stuff and take the ideas here, but make it so that there's a visual display for you. So the concept of what we did here, now that the story's been told, is that those are just the notes of the chord. And I just nuked them and stuck them in order and went, compared to the E major scale, which would be an E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, we got an E, G, and a B, which is a 1 flat, 3, and a 5. In English, that is the E major scale. If I start the major scale, it goes 2 holes and a half, 3 holes and a half. And if I took the first, third note and the fifth notes, those would be E, G sharp, and B. But if we had an E, G, and a B instead of a E, G sharp, we got an E and a G. If G sharp's the 3, I guess G is the flat 3. 1 flat 3 5. So now we know what's inside the chord. If everybody had been taught that the first time somebody played that chord to them, they would have gone, I understand chord theory from, the first time you play a minor chord. Unfortunately, we weren't. So that frame of reference for when I split the room in there, that's how you kind of go from like, well, how do I get from chords to scales and scales to chords? We're just taking those pieces and cobbling them together. All right. Thank you, Sonia. I love my chalkboard. The moment I saw that by the side of the road, I went, I think they're giving it. So the funny thing is I got my hair back. I'm in exercise mode. And I kind of get out of the minivan and I'm kind of looking at the chalkboard because I'm like, I don't really want to knock on the people's door. And I'm kind of hovering, hoping they're going to come out because I see somebody, walking around the chalkboard. And they came out. Yeah, I'm like, it's free and it totally works. I'm like, so the other side is actually a whiteboard, but I don't know about you folks, but whiteboards stink, those pens. So I'm trying my chalkiness. I love peace. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much, Shredword. Much appreciated. Look at you. Likewise, I am sure. Gosh darn it. All right. Awesome. Steve Christian, what's going on? Thank you so much. Oh, awesome. Okay. So as the bass players relate, this is the same deal as that these are the notes that when the bass player is going. Now, I realize that's the stupidest sounding bass line, but okay. So for Steve and everybody else in the room, we're going to talk about my favorite analogy of the day. And this is super important. I think I probably mentioned it last week, but I did not add the rider and the saddle. This is going to change a couple of people's world in a really valuable way. And Dr. Phil, I'm so glad that you're here because I think this will help you in particular. All right, so here's the deal. Not that you don't have this conceptualization, but this is super, super important. So if you think about a piano player, the left hand is generally speaking, when it's not going do 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 do, it's hitting the root note. If I'm going to play an E major chord, it's hitting either the E in the bass or it's hitting the G sharp in the bass, which is if the chord has got an E, G sharp, and a B in it, that E major chord is in first inversion. And one of the great things you can do in the first chord in the second inverse, or I should say the kind of the second line of the second verse. So instead of going there, we go. Sorry, I'm going to go 1, 4, 5. E, A, B. So the second time I went, instead of going E, A, B, E, I went G sharp, which is basically E over G sharp. So the left hand of the piano is either hitting, generally speaking, the bass note, the E, or more often than not, if it's playing some other note, it's going to be hitting the 3, which is basically playing that chord in an inversion. So he's either playing the 1 or the 3 in the bass. That's what the bass player plays. So Steve, thank you for joining us. That's specifically your part of the analogy. So our deal is as we're following the horse that's chunking along, All right, got it. We're in the key of E major, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. All right, we got an E, G sharp, and B. A, C sharp, and E, B, D sharp, F sharp. So if we know the notes of those chords, we actually know what we're aiming for over that E chord. So we know those notes, we know how to kind of outline that. And this is the deal. Those same notes I just used to arpeggiate that are the same notes that are the best notes for melody. Those are the same notes that are best for soloing. And what we do is we color around those notes with the other notes that are in the key. But basically what's happening is the horse is kind of jumping from bass note to bass note, including every so often playing the 3 in the chord, which means you want to be aware, like, oh, they're playing that chord in first inversion, which means you really don't want to be targeting the G sharp of an E major chord. You really want to be targeting the E, G sharp, and B of that E major chord. But the point being is he's bouncing around as the horse. You are the rider. Now, a piano player would work with inversions, so instead of moving around a bunch, they would just play different inversions here and play their melodies around those inversions. We, on the other hand, as guitar players, are going to be the rider on the saddle. And we want to be playing horse rider as the bass notes are moving around, following those, jumping around, because that's where our melody notes are. Those are our solo notes. Those are our resolution tones. And generally those 1s, 3s, and 5s, predicated by what note in the key the bass player is playing the root of, as in, I'm at the 1, I'm at the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 1, 6, 4. You can't drink it slow because it's fast if it's quick, right? Any of those of you who are old enough to remember those commercials. The point being is that the chords that follow that and the notes you would be playing, that's how this kind of the horse, the rider, and the saddle, if they cruise along together, that's how you navigate music. And it's not how most of us are taught to play music on guitar. And so I'm going to go back to Always With You, because it's my favorite example. So if Joe's just walking out, he's going 1, 3, 4, 5. The 4 is creating tension. You don't want to hang out there. But again, like I said, the notes of the chord. Then he goes to the 4 chord. He's doing the 3, 2, 1. Then he goes to the 5 chord. 6, flat 7. Neither of which you want to hang at. That 5 sits beautifully, right? That's 1, 2, 3. And what's neat is he kind of walks up. You know what note you really want to hear next? Well, it's the octave of the 4. And he's back to the octave of the 5 now. Or I should say he was at the octave of the 5. But all of that business is doing exactly what I'm talking about. And for many of us, that's probably one of our favorite guitar melodies. And this is the prime example of how you're using the chord tones. The horse is moving as it kind of works through the progression and goes to that 6 chord. And that is the essence of music. So if we learn to think about it like that, it allows us to know which notes we want to be paying attention to, which means understanding those chord tones and knowing how to find them is valuable. And or just waiting until the chord progression comes back to the root, and we can kind of noodle around long enough until it kind of comes back to the tonic chord. But all of that is about another piece of this that's super, super important, which is having a strategy, right? Okay, now, well, you're like kind of like, well, that's great. You know, we're on a live stream. How in the world do you provide a larger framework for a strategy? So one of the things that I'm toying with doing on my Instagram, which, by the way, in case you don't know me on Instagram, I want to please invite you to come hang out with me, and please like and please comment on my posts. I'm desperately trying to build my Instagram because it's hugely important to my plans for 2026. You can help me immensely in that regard. But I'm going to be doing some teaching things on there around mapping out modes and single string stuff. And also, more importantly, finding out what people's felt need is and addressing that. All right, I've expressed mine. I want to know yours, because then I can really serve in a better way. So the deal is, getting back to what you can do all of this, is strategically going, look, if I can identify where the natural notes are up and down the neck, and I know, for example, I'm in the key of E, fill in the blank. For example, the key of E major is going to have an E, G sharp, and B. E Dorian, an E, G, and B. E Phrygian, E, G, and B. E Lydian, E, G sharp, and B. E mixed Lydian, E, G sharp, and B. E minor, E, G, B. E Locrian, E, G, B flat, because I know how much time you spend in Locrian. Actually, Locrian, by the way, is actually one of the coolest sounding modes ever. Doesn't get enough love, and it should. All right, so all that said, I'm going to take a quick moment, wipe down my strings. I'm going to double check there aren't any questions that relate to this specifically. And then I'm going to, before I do that, let me just reiterate, the place you want to start is to start off on the high E string, just going, all right, in the key of C major, as we walk up the key of C, and I'm sorry I don't have a graphic set up here, it goes C, hold the D, hold the E, half to F, hold the G, hold the A, hold the B, half to C. The half steps, as you walk up the key of C, happen between E and F and B and C, which are the 3 and 4 and the 7 and 1 of that key. The idea is to kind of go, all right, E, half to F, hold the G, hold the A, hold the B, half to C, hold the D, hold the E, E, hold the D, hold the C, half to B, hold the A, hold the G, hold the F, half D, and then spend some time doing a pick, hammer, pull, and we're going to do it to the octave of that F. And then... and then... and if you really want to torment yourself, instead of going just up, sorry, I hit a G sharp. That is to say I'm going E, F, G, G, F, E on the way up. On the way down, go A, G, F, G, A. And so we're leading with the pinky, and that is way harder. But here's one of the things, and this is my challenge to you. If we don't practice the things that we suck at, highly probable that we will continue to suck at them. I don't know about you, but when I watch somebody like Dweezil Zappa, that video of him on Rick Beato, I got so much work to do. It just terrified me. I'm like, oh, I felt like I was in second grade, and I desperately don't want to be in second grade again. So practicing those transitions, leading with the pinky, just getting used to doing those, and they're much harder until you kind of go, well, they're not that hard. Where do you start? Just start moving the pinky around. So sorry, I cut one short. So basically I'm doing quarters, eighth notes, 8-note triplets, 16 notes. And the idea is doing that. I promise you, your pinky work will get much better. And different types of articulation. And if you really want to bust your balls, or pardon the expression, sorry, I hope I didn't offend anybody there. That right there is it. And that's basically twosies. And you kind of heard right around here. That's a place I've got to work. And I would actually take these two surrounds, slowly. I'm basically playing D and C, the open E, and then C and D. Then the same concept from C and B, and then B and A, back to C and B. Now what we're doing is what I like to call layering. We've taken learning these natural notes and turned into something that's a technique builder, but in the processes, you're going to know where those notes are. And that's how I was kind of going, oh, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. I'm like, I kind of was playing the shapes, and I was like, how do I know what notes those are? And I guess because I've practiced them so many times. So strategy-wise, the place I would suggest starting is just getting really comfortable with those note names on that string, because you can make it fun to practice and then kind of go, all right, let's do it on these other strings. Now, Brett Van V mentioned the C sharp. Again, I'm going to mention the F sharp going back a step. The first place you want to start adding stuff is adding an F sharp, because the first key that has an accidental, when we think about the circle of fifths, we go from C to G. G has that one sharp. Then we go from G to D. That has two sharps. And then D to A. Now, last time I couldn't figure out the math, so I'm going to briefly revisit that before I jump back into it. Oh, I love you, Phil. You are the best. Awesome, all that. Hello, Brad. How you doing? Good morning, my friend. All right, so the deal is, what we're doing is strategically, and again, we're going to come back to E Dorian in a moment, but as we're talking about a strategy so you can really own the neck without being stuck in the patterns, when you don't want to be stuck in a pattern, is how do we take a starting place, which is the natural notes, on the high E string, which gives us E Phrygian, which is the relative Phrygian mode of C major. So if we go up a fifth from C major, we're in G major. Last week, I couldn't work out the math of it. I spent some time realizing what's happening is, well, we're going through the circle of fifths. At E, we're going through the cycle of fourths. I could have had a V8. That is to say, what's happening if we're starting off with the 3 mode. Then the 3 mode is becoming the 6 mode. And the 6 mode is becoming the 2 mode. And the 2 mode is becoming the 5 mode. The 5 mode is becoming the 1 mode. And the 1 mode is becoming the 4 mode. And the 4 mode is becoming the 7 mode. As in, we're starting with Phrygian. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. Then that, we go up a fourth from Phrygian. We end up with minor, which is going to be E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E. And we go up a fourth from minor, and we end up with Dorian. Thank you, Brett. E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, E. And we go up a fourth from there, and we end up with, make sure I got my math right, we should end up with Mixolydian. E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. Sorry, I said D sharp, and I played a D. Mixolydian, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D, E. And we go up a fourth from there, and I end up at major. E, F sharp, G, A, B, sorry, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. That happens when I think and try and talk and play these at the same time. Then we go up a fourth from there, and we end up with Lydian. E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. And then we go up a fourth from there, and it's Locrian. E, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E. So systematically, if you're looking for a strategy, that's it. We are starting relative to the key of C major. We're going through the circle of fifths, but as it works out at E, we're playing through the cycle of fourths as you're looking how it's rotating modally. The 3 mode becomes the 6 mode, which becomes the 2 mode, which becomes the 5 mode, which becomes the 1 mode, which becomes the 4 mode, which becomes the 7 mode. And collectively, through that cycle, each time you're getting a new sharp until you get to Locrian, where you add the 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, B's the 5, B's the 5. We end up with a B flat, the flat 5 there. Now, for some folks, their face is melting, going, what in the flippin' world is he talking about? I'm talking about starting off with just the natural notes at E and just getting comfortable with going, all right, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E. Have some fun with it. Do it in thirds. Sure. And all of a sudden you're like, oh. And I promise you, once you can do it there, you've trained yourself exactly what you need to be thinking about to do it there, there, and there, and there. And all of a sudden you're like, holy flippin' cow. Okay. That pretty much puts a bow on that. And gosh darn it, I apologize. Last week I kind of got trying to figure out what was that secondary movement happening under there, and I just I missed it. So I got a chance to kind of wrap some stuff around that. All right. So. Riley, hello, my friend. So to answer that question, this right here, that's the notes of E Dorian. And the most important thing to keep in mind about that is it's a sound. And I did add the flat 5. You find a progression, and I promise you people, I am getting closer than further away if I'm actually providing a couple of things. First of all, Brett Sackett, I saw that you're on here. Hello, my friend. I have not forgotten about you and your annoyance with me for not having actually gotten the Doppler download. This is the Doppler dumpster. The Doppler download is going to be a weekly email. I've got to kind of map out kind of the initial sign-up part, because the initial, I hate to use the word clickbait because that sounds so against the feeling of what it is, but the initial way to get people on board is letting people download either a guitar profile or a backing track, and that's the point of entry. They get that immediately as they kind of start to sign up. But then every week I kind of bundle stuff up and I send it out. It's also kind of an update on what I'm up to, hence an update or a download, literally the Doppler download. So I've got to kind of get that little piece together, but it's coming. And the idea is it means that we can share progressions. In this particular case, my dear friend, young Mr. Sackett, Riley, is that I find keys and progressions and I'm like, oh, it's in this thing. And I kind of map out what the notes are. And I use those as vehicles to kind of begin to work out a couple of things. First of all, if we're thinking about the E Dorian mode, I kind of go, well, first of all, where are my E's? Because those are the roots of the chord progression, right? So that's where I want to think about it. Blah, 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 blah. 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 And so that way, we know if we just want to every time end at the 1, we know how to do that. And like I was talking about before, is we're looking for other chord, our tonic chord tones, those E's, G's, and B's, and 1 flat 3 and 5. We go, all right, well, let me just, first of all, instead of aiming for all the E, G's, and B's, let me find my G's. Okay. Holy cow. It took a minute, sorry. Or in the first 12 frets. So don't play the 12. It's the 11th fret and below. So here's my G. Here's my G. There's my G. And the funny thing is that particular G, as Brad Jensen will know, is elusive. That's what most of us first learned to tune the G string. For some reason, that little G, every so often, we're like, where is that? All right. Then there, and then there, and then there. So then we do the same thing with our B's and open B string. And then we know where those notes are, and those are where our resolution tones are. And it allows us to be thinking exactly like, what do I think? How do I begin to onboard this? So I'm going to pull Jane back up here, and you're going to see me, in particular, I'll probably make some stupid faces. I kind of outline my E, G's, and B's. Now I'm going to play them in slightly different order. This is another thing for those of you that kind of, in a minute ago, I divided kind of like, all right, those of you that are a little new to this, those of you that are less new to this, being able to just kind of go, all right, within the first 12 frets, being able to go E, G, B, B, E, G, E, G, B, what a moron, G, B, E, B, E, G, E, G, B, and then I guess backwards to make it difficult to see how well I don't know this, B, G, E, G, E, B, E, B, G, flipping A, B, G, E, holy cow, G, E, B, B, G, E. Could have been worse. But the point being is that way you're used to just looking at the neck, looking for those notes. And that's a lot different than like, hey, let me just pay attention to where the root note is. But the root note is a great place to start. Getting back to this other point, and I'm going to run with Brett Van V's point in a minute. Where are those F sharps? Holy cow, Doug, come on. And then where are the C sharps? Sorry, my bad. I should know the C sharp's there. Sorry. Enjoy it as you watch me make a mistake. Hello. I hope it feels good for some of you. I make facetious, right? I'm looking for a C sharp. Holy cow. Oh, I'm right, C sharp. My bad. Right there. So this is another one of those notes that's ever so slightly elusive on the 3rd string. For whatever reason, my brain. And by the way, call me stupid, but I'm like, if C sharp's there over there, it's got to be somewhere around there over there, and it is. All right, so the idea is then we're also going to go, here's one of the other things I want to point out real quick. And I call this diagonals. Are you able to see those C sharps happening across those strings like that? Because if you are, that's a huge help, right? Because then we can, well, it's there, right? It's there. And gosh darn it, if I can see that concept of that happening there, I can probably see it happening across there. And begin to kind of go, oh, okay, I get used to, in the same way that if we're singing 5-1, that perfect 4, I digress. The point being is be getting comfortable with ways to do that. And those are the notes that we're aiming for, such as we know that we're looking for, instead of an F natural and a C natural, we're looking for an F sharp and a C sharp. So it really means that we're taking the visual nature of what we started the guitar with and seeing shapes and going, now we're going to do a more educated version of that. Riley, talking to you, my brother. All right, I'm going to pull up J, and I'm going to start off on the high E string. And I may make some stupid face when I hit the E, G, or a B, and then I'll probably begin to do the same thing on other strings. And another thing to do, actually, let's see how I can do this. Oh, what a nasty exercise. Doing it in time. I'm having a hard time. Wait till my students get this today. Take those triads. I love it. All right, holy cow. That right there, somebody out there, that's going to be your day. Have at it. And by the way, I would suggest doing this. And conceptually, we spend a lot of time in E. So I would get used to doing that with E, G sharp and B, and E and G and B. And if you spend a lot of time in Locrian, I almost said Oakland, E, G, B, and B flat. That's the major, E, G sharp, B, minor, triad, that is E, G, and B, and diminished E, G, and B flat. So again, E, G sharp, B, B, E, G sharp, E, G sharp, B, G sharp, B, E, B, E, G sharp, E, G sharp, B, B, E, G sharp, B, E, E, G, oh, come on, E, B, G sharp, crash and burn, B, B, G sharp, E, G sharp, E, B, B, G sharp, E. If you do that, I promise you, you're going to know where those tonic triad notes are everywhere on the neck. And what's going to start to happen is you're going to find your fingers going there naturally without thinking about it. You're like, and this is what happens when you practice them. And this is my challenge to you again. If we don't practice, we don't get better. That's not to say that in the kind of the shredding along with stuff, we don't discover new licks. But this type of practice is how we actually take the basic animal, if you will. There's the horse. There's the saddle. We're the rider. We're supposed to be whipping that horse, figuratively, going where I want you to go. And I know there's a bunch of people in the room because I know how it works for so many people, especially when we feel like, flipping A, I don't understand this. Where you feel like you're being bounced around off the back of the horse and you're like, I am feeling so out of control and I don't know how to feel like, hey, I'm riding the horse and flipping, taking me for a ride, right? Okay. So I'm going to pull back up a little bit of Jane just for pisses and giggles, and let's see how I manage to flog my way through this. I'm going to mute this. Hopefully I'll remember to unmute. Thank you, Jane. I'll see you in a minute. All right, so the deal there, at the end, you saw me actually doing what we talked about before with E Phrygian. But I added, instead of the F, I played an F sharp. And instead of the C, I played a C sharp. And then I walked up each ring. I played an F, sorry. Brain on. G. C sharp. And that way you kind of begin to find a way of kind of making it fun, right? And that literally was just taking all those notes, the E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and D, and just kind of go, all right, I'm on the E string. E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, E. Kind of almost played a D sharp there. I'm on the A string. We're going backwards. A, G, F sharp, E, D, C sharp, B, A. I'm on the D string. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. I'm on the G string. G, F sharp, E, D, C sharp, B, A, G. I'm on the B string. B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B. I'm on the E string. E, D, C sharp, B, A, G, F sharp, E. And that way you kind of just get used to thinking about it. And strategically, once you begin to do that, you can kind of begin to cruise on any one of these strings, because instead of it just being like, I don't know where the patterns are there. I play the C natural on my back. Especially when you end up in an area like this, where we got our F, and this is one of the other things you're going to go, all right, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp. And all of a sudden you kind of go, oh. And all of a sudden you begin to play your 3-note string modes. And one of the things I'm working on that is probably going to show up as an Instagram Doppler'S is this concept. So I play the C sharp, C natural again. Basically taking the top 3 strings. And again, if you don't know it's a C sharp, then you don't know it's a C sharp. It's like, it's the wrong note. I don't know why. Basically, it's taking the top 3 strings of, in this particular case, G major, or G 3-note string mixolydian. And I'm basically going second string, first string, second string, third string, third, second. And that little sequence there has you basically focused on the most difficult string transitions. It's just weird. And I think I'm going to start it, whatever 3-note per string mode is kind of down here at G is where the starting place is going to be. Oh, G natural. And if you don't know where those F sharps and C sharps are on that, it's really hard, but I'm just kind of going, all right, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. And I'm like, all right, there's A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, A. Sorry, I got to play the C sharp if I'm going to call it out. And on this side, that's our D, C sharp, and B. E, C sharp, B. Sorry, my D, C sharp, B, E, D, C sharp, F sharp, E, D. That's hard to do backwards. G, F sharp, E, A, G, F sharp, B, A, G. So you're just getting used to finding those notes. And start mixing them up. All of a sudden you really know where those notes are because you're coming to it from a place of confidence and knowing where the flipping notes are instead of like, that shape and that key, let me just do something else, which is what we do all the time. And I'm done being a wussy. And actually, if anybody hasn't seen that video with Dweezil Zappa and Rick Beato, just watch it. I don't think I've seen anybody with a command of the instrument, and I'm kind of saying anybody, I'm just putting it out there, because at a certain point he does Eddie, and you're just like, there's a bunch of people out there, quote unquote, doing the Eddie thing. I dare you to watch Dweezil do it. I double dug dare you. How's that for the season? And gosh darn it, it's just shocking. All right. Let me get to the bottom here. Albert, so you say having a backing track that has a lot of quick chord changes? No. All right, so I'm glad you said that. So here's the deal. No, you don't want a lot of quick chord changes. And there is a device here, hiding over here, that I have yet to work into the routine here. But this is from Game Changer Audio. And these guys are good. Is this a plasma? What do you call it? No, it's the plus pedal. And it's a sustain pedal that can sustain individual notes and individual chords. And you're going to see working that its way into the routine here. And the great thing about that is that allows you to just kind of hit your own chord and just have it loop as long as possible. The thing about the chord progressions is finding something that moves you, right? You're like, I put on that this is my litmus test. I'm glad you brought this up. If I can't listen to a song without having to pick up my guitar, I'm like, that's the jam track for me. There's an Albert Collins thing that's in C that's shot at in Austin City Limits. Like the moment he starts playing, I'm like, his band is just smoking. I'm like, oh, instant jam track. So these just live. They are the thousands of tabs I stupidly leave open because I come back to them. I play over the top of them. They take me someplace that I need to go as a musician because it allows me to frame Brett. The other second, Riley. They allow me to frame the knowledge, if you will. If you're taking your hat off and you're hanging it on that progression, you're getting a chance to live there. So Albert, literally, if it's a matter of just going, hey, I want to hang out in the key of E minor, C major, and for you, I will put together a chord progression that specifically just does that. And I may hang out there. Just that way you got enough time. And again, that was kind of right, kind of like, oh, I totally feel that. As a matter of fact, hang on. The other trick, if you're feeling it, don't miss it. 1, 2, 3. Hello, hit the record button. Come on, you can do it. There you go. There we go. You can do this, Doug. Now, I had, I'm going to call this Albert's Jam, so I know what to look for. Alberts Jam. Okay, good. So the idea is that I really wanted to go to another chord. I wanted to, and by the way, let's take a moment. I'm going to rabbit trail on this. I really wanted on the second cycle to go to a B minor 7 or B minor 11. Now, the thing about, well, hang on. I guess if I so wanted to do it, I guess I should do it. So maybe I'll do another version of it. So 3, 4. All right, good. Albert 2. Albert 2. Good. All right, so the deal is that when I went to that B minor 11 chord, I went to the, so that was the F sharp, and that B minor 11 chord is basically a B minor 5, B, D, F sharp. And that F sharp is the 5 of that chord. And as we look at E minor, E, G, and B are the 1, flat 3, and 5 of that key. So the point being is F sharp, I specifically am hugging that because as it sits against that B versus the E, that F sharp, that's a major second away. And that is a tension note. The great thing about those tension notes, so I hit the 2 of you, kind of did a little baby bend to the flat 3. That was there's the root, this is the full. Sorry, I bet I should have heard that. I got so C sharpy. And I'm really liking that F sharp. Now, there's a couple of reasons why that F sharp over that B minor 11 are so nice. You can hear it. Hum the note. I'm going to play. Na. So that sets up. So that F sharp rather than the B. Yeah, you get that, but that's such an obvious one. Where's it? Me and my band today. And in theory, you should have been able to hear me outlining the chord changes because I'm really gonna, without trying to make it sound like, you know what? Albert, for you and anybody else, this is actually what you actually want to do. You want to go vanilla. Make it vanilla. I'm sure I got, okay, right. So I'm basically playing an E minor. I've started off with the. Just kind of riffing around those arpeggios. I'll do a Zach on that. Okay, basically what that is, and that's basically take the Zach rhythm. It's basically 2 6s and a 4. Which really, I found an instance of Randy doing it, so it's really a Randy riff. But, and the tricky part, that last one, is that. So basically what's happening is we're doubling the first 2 notes. The first 2 times on the last time we don't. I got it on the flat 3, and you actually know I'm playing the flippin' 1 flat 3 and 5, E, G, and B, the 1 3 and 5, C, E, G, and the B, D, F sharp, the 1 flat 3 5, and you actually know what flippin' notes you're playing as it relates to those chords, and then I added the flat 7. And then the natural 7. And that's basically taking, and that's basically 4 notes. And wait for it, that's 2 6s into 4s and a 4 again. So basically I'm starting playing E minor pentatonic, E, G, A, B, D, E, and I'm starting at D, E, G, A. And you can think of it a couple ways. I'm basically going up 4 notes and back 2. Or you can just think of, it's a 6-note sequence that the first 4 and the second 2 are like that. We're just going up and down without repeating the top note. We do that twice. And we just go up the first 4 notes, and that's it. And I'm taking that sequence and applying it to Sorry, I got to aim for the A of the B minor 7. And all of a sudden, we made theory fun, which is the whole flipping point. Because that's how you unlock the guitar. Now, there are guys, I mentioned that video of Neil Sean, 17-year-old Neil at Don Weir's Music City, just kind of going, there's Neil, and then there's the rest of us. So for the rest of us, we actually have to kind of do some of the work that Neil just instinctively, without, it's just a gift that is why at 17, Clapton wanted him, Santana wanted him, and he's been touring the world, winning Grammys and selling bazillions of records and writing the best songs of any pop band, kind of, you know, that most people would agree, more hit songs, just an insane, that has a killer guitar player, right? Yes, Van Halen's a great song, great songwriting band, but, you know, Journey, you know, any Sopranos fans out there, you know, I remember watching that last episode. It ends with Journey. I mean, I'm even getting goosebumps talking about it. It was just like, it was such a perfect moment where you go, of all the bands in the world that you could crown one of the most successful TV series in history, or off TV series, ends with Journey. Boom. I digress. All right. Hello, Shredding Finn. What's going on? Rich Wild. Holy cow. So what you guys don't know is Rich Wild and I were in a band together. He's one of the most amazing vocalists I've ever met. Gosh darn it, string hopping. I love that. Hello, Rich. Great to see you, my dear friend. Hello. Okay. By the way, Griffin Gaines. By the way, I was waiting to see you pop up. So speaking of community, Griffin kindly sent along an installment of Community Coffee. So I brewed up some fresh brew. Thank you very much, Griffin. Much appreciated. Very much in the veins this morning. I think it's getting the job done. Interesting. I'm getting slightly gunky finger this morning, which is interesting. Probably means I'm excited. All right. I love Journey, Riley. I love that. Okay. So Riley, as of right now, need to leave. Merry Christmas to all. Merry Christmas to you, Sonia. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Right now, I'm running through the Helix Stadium. I am a, what am I? I'm a gearnivore. I kind of love all gear, and I kind of love plugging into whatever it is. And again, per kind of the main topic of what we've been talking about, how do you plug in and make something happen, right? Doesn't matter what you're plugged into, doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what guitar, doesn't matter what's going on. How do you know where to go that when you go there, you're like, oh, that was musical, that was good, you know? The idea is, how do you take a concept and turn it into something that, regardless of the speed of the progression, that allows, you know, if I took that little... I've got a little bit of gate. I'm going to turn the gate off here real quick. Let's turn the gate off. So there I'm still outlining that E minor. And there are certain keys. You know, the reason I suggested starting off with this E Phrygian thing is that way you're just super comfortable with all the natural notes. E minor. It's a great key because it's all the natural notes except for F sharp. And you're like, okay. And on guitar, you get all that open string. And also with pentatonic, you get kind of that 12th fret. And this is where you begin to kind of go, okay, if that's E, and we're outlining the minor pentatonic, E, G, A, B, D, E. So one thing is you can be sing pattern number 1, pattern number 5, and pattern number 1 and 5. And it's that same concept. And putting them together. However, you think, hey, that's D, E, and G. G, A, and B. B, D, and E. E, G, and A. A, B, and D. And D, E, and G. You kind of begin to go, oh, I see that, right. Okay. Again, this was D, E, G, A, B, D, E, G, A, B, D, E. And this is E, G, A, B, D, E, G, A, B, D, E, G. And if you can see those kind of happening at the same time. So oh, right. I got to play a B instead of a C. And an E instead of an F. Got it. Oh, come on. The right hand's just basically tapping the E minor pentatonic starting off. It's A, D, G, B, E, and A notes. And all of a sudden, it makes it a lot easier to start playing this stuff. It does take an initial amount of right. All right, E, G, A, B, D, E, E, D, B, A, G, E. But that's kind of how you get there. All right. Okay, so we have, I'm going to, Rich, I love you, bro. Great to see you. Very kind. Rich and I spent a lot of hours playing and loving playing music together. Always a pleasure. Captains of Crunch, forever, my friend. All right. Gosh darn it. So, Armando Diaz, ¿habla español? No? Buenos días, mi buen amigo. Okay. Go-to cab for Mace's Mark Series amps like the Mark II C+. Okay. There was the other question where we're going to jump into Gearland. Gosh darn it. Doppler's Gear Garage. Favorite load box. So here we go. Down the rabbit trail. Now, behind me, you're going to see various, actually, ironically, kind of a whole array of things that kind of represent a really great representation of the history of guitar amps. That right there is an original Mark One. I think that one is actually a prototype. It actually has a plexi faceplate. Most people have never seen a Mesa Boogie with a plexi faceplate. That's a Mark II B. That's a Mark II C plus. And no, I take it back. That's a Mark One, but that's the Mark One over there with the flexi faceplate. Say that 10 times fast. Helix, Catalyst, and what I initially kind of got going on were my Triple Crown TC50s, and most importantly, the Cab Clone IRs on top of them. I'm a big fan of the Mesa Boogie Cab Clone IRs as a reactive load box. I think they work great. They are kind of, first of all, I've got pretty much all of them here, so I'm going to kind of share my take on all of this, including IRs. First of all, I'm friends with the guys at an outfit called Worship Tutorials and Signal Theory. I guess it's a pair of outfits, the same guys. My buddy Brian Wall there is a great guitar player. He's a great friend, and he's brilliant at capturing cabinets. So I have an IR of his for oversized Mesa 412 that's kind of been one of my go-tos as of late. Justin York of York Audio, his siblings, and he also spent some time touring with them, are, first of all, Justin is a brilliant guitar player, lives in Nashville, but Justin's IRs are also great. He's got a ton of different things. And Justin and I had an extended conversation about older, you actually don't have an oversized recto cabinet in the picture. Those are the 212 verticals. But the oversized recto cabinets, he and I had this conversation about the older cabinets. They don't just dry out because they've been out in, kind of the wild, but they also get played. And just like a guitar, the resonance and the resonant frequencies change the way the cabinets respond. It becomes part of the mechanism, just in the way if you put a pickup in a different body, that pickup's the same piece of, electromagnetic schluff, but it's going to sound different in a different guitar. And so Justin is big on that. So, and I would have to agree with him. So Justin, York Audio, great IRs. Tone Junkie, I have not played any of the Tone Junkie IRs, but I am really good friends with HW as well, and he does great work, especially for those of you that live in Kemper World. All right, so Brian Wall and those guys, Brian's got an oversized recto cabinet, and he did a really, really great job on shooting this. Now, let's talk strategy, and then we're also going to talk reactive load boxes, because they both matter. I'm going to say the most important thing I can say to anybody that's wanting to use a reactive load box. If you're using it to go into the DAW or go front of house, anything possible you can do to keep an actual speaker load on your amp makes a difference. And I'm going to have to do a larger video. I've got a list of topics, but one of them is actually, and I put a looper into the front end of one of my boogies, and I had it using I was using Cab Clone on IR on something, and I disconnected the cabinet such that the amp went from seeing the load of the cabinet to the load of the reactive load inside Cab Clone IR, which does a great job, but it's not the same as the relationship that happens. It's not literally they kind of come up and touch each other. They send information in both directions, and it changes the way the power amp section of the amp responds. You plug in a different cabinet. The test would be, if you don't believe me, plug in two cabinets to your amp, mic one of them up, two identical cabinets or two different cabinets, and then swap out the cabinet of the one that's not mic'd up. And I promise you that other cabinet will start to sound, well, actually, I'm not going to say I promise you, but my guess is, especially the more disparate those two cabinets are, the different they're going to sound, because of the way 50% of that load is going to change the way the amp is responding to that. It will be subtle, but I would bet you $5. How about that? Maybe I shouldn't do that, but I will do it as a test. And what happened was I had a cabinet hooked up, I disconnected it, and then I recorded it, and I looked at I wanted to be able to hear it, but I wanted to be able to see it, and blatantly I could see the difference of not having a cabinet, But again, the right cabinet is a really big deal. So I'm going to say this. I love everything that the UA people do, but one of the disadvantages of the aux box is that you can't adjust the reactive capacitance, if you will, of the load. It's one of the things about the Waza tube amp expander that was designed by my dear friend Jeff Slingleff, who, rest in peace. Jeff was a genius, and you can adjust the presence and the resonance, I think is what it's called, and it changes the way the reactive load interacts with the amplifier. It's a big deal. It's my understanding, actually I learned this from Jeff, that the internal reactive load inside the aux box, great device, lots of people love it, works really well with a Marshall, but that's based on a deluxe reverb. So that curve, that impedance curve, is a really important part of the conversation between an amp and a cabinet. And there are lots of people, for example, back in the day, if you'd seen Paul McCartney and Wings in 1976, I think that was my first big rock concert, but the guitar player was using a basement head and a Marshall cabinet. Great combination. That is not the cabinet that amp was designed to be played with. But that cabinet not only changed the sound of what was coming out, but the interaction between that cabinet and the amplifier were part of the magic. And so the relationship, you don't have to use the stock cabinet. However, you will have heard me talk about this before, and I will talk about it again if you ever get a chance to go to the NAMM show and go by the Diesel booth. Talk to Peter Stapfer. He's one of the two Peters at Diesel. And he and I had a long conversation. He was like, look, we design the amps with a very specific cabinet in mind, and the amps and the cabinets are tuned to work together so they speak to each other in a very specific way. So most of the time, your amplifier and the cabinet it was designed to come with, it was designed to come with and play through that cabinet. Changing that out is going to change it. All that to say, a reactive load is not just kind of putting a dummy load on there. What it's actually doing is it's giving information back to the amplifier. Finding and understanding the one that works best for what you're doing is key to that. Also has the features. The thing about the Roland thing that's a little bit of a drag is you kind of have to load their IR converter, and then you have to kind of convert it into their IR format, and then you can kind of load away. But that said, there's an SDE 3000 built into it, so you get a lot of really, really cool additional features which you get. Now, what I was going to say is that the good folks at Mojo Tone sent me a 212 cabinet. I bought a pair of Celestion Redback, and those are rated at 150 watts piece speakers, and those are each on their own input. And so I can run whatever, they're 8 ohms, so those are generally set up for my boogie stuff. But I can run whatever boogie amp that's here, including the triple rec that's here. I can run it as loud as I want, and I'm not going to blow those speakers up. Ideally, with the triple rec, you might want to actually run it into both speakers, but generally speaking, unless you've just got it dimed, you get the point. So the point being is that and the reason I chose that speaker is I looked at the impedance curve and the frequency response curve of the classic Lead 80 and the Black Shadow, which are essentially the same speaker. And then in turn, I also looked at the Vintage 30, and they were so close to what the Redback is. I'm like, that's going to give the amplifier that amount of information. So if you want to go all the way down the rabbit trail with me, one of my favorite conversations is this: what you feed back to the amplifier is a fundamentally essential part of getting the best results out of whatever reactive load box you're using, because really then you're just using an IR loader. And if you can do that, that's the best way to go. However, per the questions, IRs and IR loaders and Mesa Boogie. I love the stock Mesa ones. I love the John Petrucci ones. I think they all sound great. Now, here's the thing that you want to also understand about IRs that's really important, is that different people have different schools of thought about what they want to have happen when you load that IR. Some people are like, I'm giving you a whole produced, compressed, EQ'd signal chain that's album ready. Other people are like in line 6, we actually want to capture the essence of that cabinet, warts and all, such that when you load it, if you want to compress it, have at it. If you want to EQ it, have at it. but we're doing our best job to give you the rawness of it. Now, in the Helix Stadium, in the Agora amp models, they've added a feature called Hype. And it basically, I don't know how Eric does it. He's a flippin' genius. But what it does, it kind of does all those things. It goes from the unproduced version of the amp to some idealized version where it starts to add a little extra sag maybe and a little bit more compression and all the things that you kind of wish a stock fill-in-the-blank amp did a little bit better and do that. Now, a number of these amp models that I play through, I don't actually have the Hype engaged. I think on the Mark II C Plus, hello, I did use the Hype, but there's a super reverb that's in here that I didn't feel the need to do it, and you know the idea is that an idealized version is the realistic version. Most people who plug into a Plexi Marshall who've never plugged into one kind of went, I'm missing something, or I'm missing something, you know, and it's a whole different conversation. So, in any case, all right, let me see. Okay, let me just briefly. All right, so Armando, to your question, I have been, as of late, Brian from Signal Theory and Worship Tutorials, the oversized Recto 412 that he sent, although I have not, because I've been spending a lot of time with Stadium just using it stock, because I really want to know this box from the inside out. But before that, in there, I've got a combination of the stock Boogie ones, which sound great. One of the guys who recorded Third Eye Blind did those. That guy knows what he's doing, and Boogie knows what they're doing. I also have some of the Petrucci ones in there that are great. And I also have Brian's one in there, which is also great. And the York Audio ones are floating around as well, right? So the point being is that the latest flavor that I got hooked on was the Signal Theory / Worship Tutorials one. And, you know, they're all a little different because each one of those people, you know, when they are going for what they're going for, goes for something a little bit different. Again, sometimes I just want to make it sound as if you plugged the amp into the cabinet, you stuck a mic right in front of it, no treatment, no nothing. Other people are like, no, we want it album ready. And that's a decision that you want to make for kind of whatever it is that you're doing. And you may find that there's different circumstances, like when you're in the studio, I want something that feels a little bit more produced. When I play live, I want something that feels a little bit more raw, such that when it gets blended in with everything, sometimes that rawness keeps things just a little less static in the mix. And the thing about kind of production ready, it begins to compress things a little bit. And sometimes the things that kind of make the guitar jump out a little bit, you've actually tamed them. So to get things louder, you get everything a little bit too loud, if that makes sense. Good morning, Eric. Good to see you. Hello. Good morning, Stephen Greenleaf. Good to see you as well. Buenos dias. I heard that the feature on the Bazo... I heard that feature on the Boss Waza is the very thing that overstresses your amp, their reactive load knobs. Unfortunately, because Jeff is no longer alive, I can't ask him. So I can't speak to that. I have used it on a bunch of stuff. I used it when the Jose modded Marshall showed up here. It's not my amp, but it's on extended loan. Going back to the original owner sooner than later. That's what I used. And now, that said, in the future, the great thing about the Waza Tube Amp Expander is that, like all these other devices, you can use a speaker cabinet plugged into it, and then you don't have to worry about it. One of the things that I've got to get is I've got to order 1 or 2 of the 16 ohm redbacks, such that I can use those for the Marshall. There's a Marshall Major that's here, that's short of the Keith Richards high-powered twin. Those are the 2 loud. I got to plug both of them in at the same time. Now, I'm going to go a step further. I'm going to plug in the triple rectifier, 150 watts, the high-powered twin, and the Marshall Major at the same time. Oh, no, and the PV Mace, because I think that's it's got 6 L6s. It's just unbelievably loud. Why not all 4 of them at the same time? And I'll just have to be upstairs or something, because all of them on their own are just so inexcusably loud, it's not even funny. In any case, I digress. I'm going to talk to my amp guy about that. So he is the guy. He works on everybody's amps in the Bay Area. I'll ask him about that. Yes, indeed, not all reactive loads are created equal. Agreed. I heard amp builders talk what appears to be negative about those reactive load boxes, knobs in the knob. Okay, well, again, it hurts the output transfer from what I gather. So without knowledge one way or the other of my personally, I cannot speak to that. So let me do a little bit of research and find out because my guy, Chris Barnett, he's just the best amp guy in the world, in my opinion. He will inform me, and I will, because what I don't want to do is give people bad information, especially when I have the ability to find out more. Do I ever record direct with a load box? Absolutely. So what's great about the Cab Clone IRs is those are reactive load boxes, and they sound great. The Waza Tube amp expander sounds great. The aux box, wherever it is, it's up there. It sounds great. Here's the other thing about the aux box, and I don't know if they've updated it. The original version of it, and I hope they have. I got a lesson that starts in 6 minutes, but you know what? This is worth answering. So let me just see this real quick. YouTube. Sorry, thinking the wrong thing. I'm not going to go to YouTube. I'm going to go to Sweetwater aux. So the original version had a Wi-Fi component that went with it. But it was set up on the old Wi-Fi standards such that any router that you've got in your house that's shooting Wi-Fi is no longer compliant. So firmware 1.2. Okay. So the deal is that basically, one of the and it's rated 150 watts, so you can use it for your louder amps. And there's, okay, the app, there we go. There we go. So here it is. Note aux requires a 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi connection. 5 gigahertz bands are incompatible. So we have the 5 gigahertz band here in the house, and I can't use the Wi-Fi on that, which, I would love it if they would. My guess is the Wi-Fi technology that's inside there, considering they're still making it, is somehow the physical components are somehow tethered to that. All right. The reason I'm searching for a new one is I cannot use it. I use it on my computer. It is so buggy, etc. So I was thinking Sir Reactive Load or the Red 7 Evo. So I do not know the Red 7 Evo. I can tell you the Sir stuff. I don't have. I haven't played hooking on screen for a while, so it's about time for me to go searching. Let me see if I can find the two Sir boxes that I've got. One of the things is, if you can get away with, and I hope you can hear me, if you can get away with keeping a cabinet loaded, is Sir, gosh darn it, I was hoping it was up there. Sir has a great box that enables you to take a tap. All right, I obviously got to make a larger video about all of this stuff, and it may be behind a stack of stuff over there. Sir, first of all, makes a bunch of great devices. This is, I think I played show and tell with this last week. This is a remote control MIDI controllable amp switching. I'm going to be doing an amps, racks, and rigs video on basically 4-cable method and being able to channel switch whatever amp it's in. And this little device is going to be one of the things that's going to be in that and other videos. They also make basically a speaker to line out box, which is great. And Mason Marangella in particular recommended that one. I've actually got two of them, although I actually can't put my fingers on them. But those work great. So Braxel, are you able? Sound is gone. Wait. Yeah. So the aux box won't work on the computer with the Wi-Fi issue. So that's the huge flipping bummer. Now, hang on. 2.5. Just seeing if maybe there's a 2.5 converter that somehow you could have some sort of box that does it, but I'm not seeing that on my initial search on Amazon. But I wouldn't, I wouldn't be surprised. If there isn't somebody who makes a box that can convert it, or some box, and here's the thing, it's a lot of extra loop-de-doop-de, but a box that could take your, can see it coming in, it is essentially is a converter. So I love the UA folks. They are absolutely fabulous. They sent me a pair of, are they down here? They sent me a pair of socks. Oh, here we go. I love UA. I'm a UA fanboy. They sent me a pair of socks for Christmas. But unfortunately, they haven't updated that box, and it's an unfortunate thing. Okay, Brad, I was off camera. I'm back. All right. And Griffin, happy holidays to you. Okay, yeah. So I feel your pain. The Sir stuff is great. I also love the tune-up stuff. It's great. The thing about the tune-up stuff that you in particular might love is the fact you get all their world of torpedo technology, which is what you don't get with the Sir. Where with and this is kind of an interesting thing. So if you spend a lot of time, you're talking about being in the studio. I got 1 minute. So the Tunos Torpedo gives you basically a virtual studio with their, what do they call their IRs? They're not reactive IRs. There's something IRs. Dynamic, I think is Celestians. But the Dyne IR maybe. And the idea is you can move the mics around in 3D space and change the mics and add EQ and whatnot and do all sorts of groovy stuff that if you were in the middle of a mix and you're like, I wish I could change the balance of maybe a little bit more 57 compared to my 121 or maybe pull the 121 so it's a little bit more on axis with the dust cap so it's a little bit brighter so it's not quite as murky so I can get the bottom end but not quite as dark. That ability to do that is one of the things that's great about that. All right. I have a lesson to teach. So I love you all dearly. Have a very Merry Christmas and I'll see you between now and the New Year. I will be back next Saturday. Thanks so much for hanging out. This has been a lot of fun and welcome to the Doppler dumpster. Thanks so much. Y'all take care for now. Bye.